point in life, there's no question about it, particularly when you're a kid and you made some of the mistakes that he made. But nevertheless, there's a checkered past involving one of his quarterbacks. You have no quarterback that has produced to the degree that Colin Kaepernick produced. Plus, you asked him to take a pay cut, but you spoke about him yesterday as if, excuse me, we gave him a chance and he was non-appreciative, essentially alluding to his personality, his temperament, his mentality, etc., etc. And we all know where that's emanating from. I thought John Elway came across as incredibly smug and dismissive of Colin Kaepernick as somebody who should be grateful for receiving anything that he received in his NFL career when he clearly had earned it. And for it to come out of the mouth of John Elway, who's a Hall of Fame quarterback, arguably the greatest, not arguably, undisputably one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen in NFL history, not to mention an elite executive in this game and a Super Bowl champion as an executive as well. It was incredibly disappointing to hear those words and just his overall position, just the ambiance, just the way he came across. To see that coming from John Elway, I was incredibly disappointed to see that way because it had me thinking about collusion and the whole national anthem protest. That John Elway had offered them. I thought it was very disingenuous on the part of John Elway, and I was disappointed in that match.
Okay, now you hit on it for me. I don't find what he said smug. Disingenuous, maybe. Look, we live in an age of, in a time, last several years especially, of disinformation. You know, in our politics, particularly coming out of Russia, right? They have a disinformation campaign across the world to destabilize places. We're going to give you information that is incorrect. So there is disinformation on the one hand. On the other hand, there is misleading information. So you say something that has truth to it, something other than what they would conclude had you not misled them, had you presented them with all of the facts. And the question is that misleading information intentional? Are you intentionally trying to cause an effect? Or is it unintentional? So what do we have here with John Elway? Is it disinformation? No, not disinformation. Can't accuse him of that. The information is accurate. Is it misleading? Yes, it is. Is it intentionally misleading? Oh, I would say it is safe to say that it is intentionally misleading. In other words, John Elway presented facts in order to cause an effect in people's thinking that is different than the effect that he would have caused had he presented context and the entire situation. So he wants to indemnify himself from accusations, obviously, that Colin Kaepernick is not being hired because of collusion or because that collusion is the result of his peaceful protest. And John Elway saying, don't look at me. This is a football thing. We tried to bring him in. He didn't want to come here. Mr. Elway, this was clearly before the peaceful protests. This predated any of these issues, at least before people were aware of a peaceful protest. This predated any argument about collusion and any accusation of it. So to defend oneself for not hiring the best available quarterback because you're offended that he didn't want to be there once upon a time. Look, John Elway deserves credit for trying to pioneer the middle-class quarterback. Remember, Stephen A., he said, this guy might be a starter. I don't know if he's a franchise guy. Why pay him like a star? We'd like to create a middle class of quarterback. I think that's smart. We don't want to overpay a guy like Colin Kaepernick. We don't think he's worth 11. We think he's worth 7. Kaepernick felt differently, and things transpired the way they did. But don't use that to make it seem as though you are not among the colluders or you are not hiring Kaepernick for reasons other than football. It is misleading information, and I believe that it is intentionally misleading.
Look at Tim Tebow, great guy, and everybody was talking about him. But what it comes down to is 40% completion or even in the low 50s. You can't win in the league with that. You won't be in the league very long. It comes down to his play as much as anything. Everyone thinks it's the stance he took. One of the things you don't look for is distractions in the locker room. You can go back to Bill Walsh, and as soon as there were guys that weren't fitting in for what he was looking for, it didn't matter how good you were. You weren't on the team for very long. You have to have people who want the same thing, fighting for the same thing, and willing to put in the time. Shannon, do you agree with Montana?
Hell no. And Skip, you've heard me say it several times. I hate disagreeing with guys that wear gold jackets, but I will not hesitate if I think they're wrong. So he said he's comparing Colin Kaepernick to Tim Tebow. So tell me, when will Colin Kaepernick get an opportunity to try for a second and a third and a fourth team? When he does that, then I can say, you know what, Joe, you might be right. When will Tim Tebow take a team to 2 conference titles, take a team to a Super Bowl, throw for 300 yards in a Super Bowl game? When will Tim Tebow do that? Oh, he didn't, and he won't. So therefore, again, he's not like Tim Tebow. Colin Kaepernick has a completion percentage of 59.5. His completion percentage last year was 58%. Skip, let me tell you a guy that you might know that Colin Kaepernick had a better completion percentage than. Cam Newton. You ever heard of him? He won the MVP. What about Blake Bortles? Now, both of those guys are going to be starting in the National Football League in 2017. Got no problem with that. But don't tell me this because of Colin Kaepernick can't throw the football. Again, he also says, when you run the ball, that style of play, this league will figure you out. Funny. In a 5-year span, the NFL has figured out Colin Kaepernick, but they can't figure out Josh McCown, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Blaine Gabbert, Mark Sanchez. You're right, the league can't figure those guys out because they're still stealing money. Josh McCown has been on 10 teams, Skip. Almost a third of the NFL franchises Josh McCown has been on, and he's still given an opportunity to start. And he has never, ever, ever taken a team to the playoffs. Neither has Ryan Fitzpatrick. Neither has Blaine Gabbert. The guy that Colin Kaepernick beat out for the job in San Francisco, his backup gets a job in the National Football League before the guy that beat him out for the job. If Colin Kaepernick is such a distraction, the Lynn Eshmont Award is given to the 49er who best exemplifies the inspirational and courageous of play. Not only did they think he played well, they said he was courageous in the stand that he took. That's what his teammates see. Now we take teammates because, I'm the first to say this. We see a guy every day, Skip. Guys march up to the podium and they can fool reporters. Can't fool me because I see you every day from 8:30 to 5. And I spend more time with you than you spend with your family. So you can't fool me. Colin Kaepernick can't fool these guys. And let me tell you something else I find very interesting. There's only 5 quarterbacks, Skip, in the National Football League in 2016 had a better touchdown to interception ratio than one Colin Kaepernick. And I'm going to see if you maybe heard a couple of these guys, Skip. One name is Tom Brady. The other guy is Dak Prescott. The other guy is Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan, and Derek Carr. All these guys have something in common. They were all in the running for MVP. And Skip, before I turn over to you, I'm going to say this. Joe, I am so glad there were more people in the 1960s that weren't like you, that was of your race. Because if they had been, we would still not have voting rights, the housing acts, and the civil liberties that we enjoyed. Because it took people like Joe Montana, Skip, to go down to Selma and to go down to Montgomery and to be in Greensboro and the sit-ins for blacks to all of a sudden to be seen as something more than animals. We still have a long way to go, Skip. We do. We know that. But there were whites that came down there and sacrificed because they thought it was, we in America. Those are American citizens, and they're treated like third class. And they say Colin Kaepernick was a distraction.